Pokemon world has a very weird power structure. It doesn't make a ton of sense if you think about it for even a little bit. Between the contradicting political information given and the people of importance that we run into on a journey, is there some kind of utopian society being run that we are unaware of that allows for medical care for all and public housing? Or is there a more sinister implication of gym leaders and elite battlers? Whatever it is it worth keeping the earth-shattering Pokemon at bay? Let's talk about it some more. Hi, my name is Cam. I talk about Pokemon a lot for someone who can't stand it anymore, but I've also played every mainline game, so I think I'm capable of taking a deep dive into the fictional region of the most profitable series known to man. Due to the amount of contradicting information between Pokemon canons, I'm going to stick to the main series Pokemon games and a few fleshed out spin-off titles you see here. I want to analyze the main aspects of the Pokemon world's ruling structure and compare it to our own world to try to paint a more concise picture. Between its intended audience and localization, what is canon to the Pokemon games is not always clear. Talk of real-world countries, references to actual animals both by NPCs and the Pokedex, and references to other Nintendo properties as video games themselves. Even with the smaller list of reference material I'm using to make this video easier to grasp, we're still in a grimy situation. Because of this, I'm going to redact obvious outliers to canon like the Pokemon War Lieutenant Surge talks about, African elephants, and NPCs talking like video game characters. Another caveat I'm going to include is the visual aspect. Pokemon started out as a game on the Game Boy, and acts like it still today. One cannot be expected to believe that Pallet Town, a place that made it on the map, only has 4 buildings. We're going to interpret the Pokemon games as sort of a looking glass into the world. It's not the clearest picture, but we can use our imaginations to fill in the visual blanks of small towns, the lack of Pokemon in the overworld, and weird one-room buildings. Just as the intended design of the original games wanted our dumb kid brains to do. Now that the housework is out of the way, let's get into the ruling class of the Pokemon world. But first let me ask you a question. Who has all the power in your country? You'll either answer it is some form of government or perhaps your god. Why do they have all the power? Because we elect them to have it or by some divine right? Why do we listen to that authority? Because ultimately, they can detain, shoot, or smite you if you go against their will, which is pretty messed up. Not everyone is born into power, not everyone has access and or training to use firearms, and we can't all be president. But the Pokemon world, gaining a modicum of power is as simple as buying one Pokeball, which costs less than $2, and running outside and catching the first rat you see. If you're lucky, it'll already be weakened, or you might find something even stronger. Nothing that kids do in the real world with their spare time is a gateway into becoming the strongest person on the planet. In the Pokemon games, there is no sign of modern military weaponry, because war hasn't been deemed profitable or practical. What use would the R&D of an automatic rifle be if the beetles outside can shoot rocks at a similar rate, plus break solid steel, and can fly? Catching a Heracross is the equivalent of a Doomsday Prepper's personal assault weaponry. What if he has 2? What if he has 2 and an Arcanine? A Pokemon that can melt almost anything and run at incredible speeds. What if he has a well-balanced full team of trained Pokemon? What could anyone do to stop him? This does bring us to the gym leaders of Pokemon. Most major cities or towns have a gym leader. Besides the trainers in their gym, not many other people in town want to battle you like the ones on the routes will. People live here, have normal lives, families, they might not even have a Pokemon. By their rank alone, gym leaders are one of the strongest trainers around, but especially in their territory. But these places are designated cities and towns, so presumably there is someone in charge. Sometimes we meet mayors, and sometimes they're also the gym leader. In the case of Drayden, he is the gym leader and the mayor of Opelucid City in the Unova region. To his name, he has been seen using 7 different types of dragon Pokemon, 6 of which are fully evolved or trained. He has command over dragons that can use some of the most powerful moves in the game, like Dragon Pulse, Hydro Pump, Stone Edge, and Earthquake. Only one of these Pokemon, with one of these moves, could take control of a small, medium-sized Midwestern town in the United States, or some villages in Japan. Drayden sounds like one of the strongest trainers around, but the fact that he isn't is scary to consider. He's still a force of nature, and he's in charge of a city. Could you imagine if your mayor of your city had 7 well-taken-care-of tanks in their backyard, as well as a recreational nuke? Oh, and they're all automatic, and they bend to his will like Iron Man technology. Suddenly, they appear more threatening and have a lot more power than before. If Drayden was so inclined, he could stay the mayor of a city for as long as he was the strongest Pokemon trainer. The title of mayor is redundant if nobody in the city could functionally stop him. Could the police stop him? We assume that there are more than 5 police officers in the Unova region with Pokemon that the game implies. But who are they loyal to anyway? The loose central government, or whoever's in charge? Even if the supposedly organized police force could mount an arrest of Drayden, their best bet is Policeman Jeff, with his 2 fully evolved Pokemon that Drayden, being a Dragon Master, could easily counter. There is never any talk of any elections happening in Pokemon, and how Drayden became the gym leader and the mayor is unclear. Some theorize that gym leaders are the mayors of the towns. But really? Just because Bugsy has a strong bug collection, he should be making legislative decisions? He doesn't even properly protect people falling in the well outside town. How is he supposed to dictate tax laws? The people of Opelucid City could aid in the efforts of political change, maybe, but there aren't that many people who call themselves trainers that could help. People are just trying to live their lives. This is seemingly the case in every place that has a gym leader. Places that don't, it's all the easier for someone with one good Pokemon to just swoop in and take control as a gym leader would. I see no legal repercussions for someone turning Floaroma Town into their own authoritarian state. The Gardeners can't stop a Steelix from ruining the flower beds. There's no gym leader for miles to convince them to do their job. The whole place is at the whim of one person having a Joker moment and ruining the place. Guzma from Sun and Moon did the exact same thing, and after the main story is allowed to roam around free, half apologizing to one person. There is very little accountability, and the only time we see criminals actually being pursued is by Looker, who works for some international police, but we never see during actual international incidents, like gods fighting. He claims he's there when new worlds are being made and Pokemon liberation is occurring, but he's never actually there when the real shit is happening. We've been to so many regions and haven't seen the base of operations or other employees. I think at this point, it's safer to assume that Looker is a vigilante and not a cop. Now, I've twisted what actually occurs in the Pokemon games to something more ominous, but in less stable regions of the world, this type of power grabbing actually occurs. The United States has aided in the destabilization of many regions and propped up warlords who then proceed to do warlord stuff. That is what every city and town in Pokemon could be, a system of power-hungry warlords fighting to maintain their status. Since the day-to-day in Pokemon games act relatively peacefully, this doesn't happen. But the gym leaders are already acting in personal, goal-oriented ways. There's no system to stop them from any dictatorial actions. Oh, and that actually happens quite a lot! Every Generation 1 Pokemon game has Gym Leader Giovanni running a mafia to take control over all the Pokemon and the businesses for himself. He remains mostly anonymous as a gym leader while collecting the resources for his takeover of the region. Pokemon Sun and Moon and its sequels have Po Town, a place literally taken over by Guzma and his team, that is now only inhabited by the gang who owns it. Watson founds an entire city and stays in power for all of that time, and specifically controls the city's electricity. 2 of those examples involve story-driven groups of people taking control, which is obviously bad. However, there are some like Watson whose situation is never questioned. The force that stops the Mafia and gang isn't some prepared task force or even one Elite Four member coming to aid the people hurt by these actions. It's you, the protagonist, who has 3 to 6 Pokemon of varying degrees of strength, who has to stop them. If a one-man army can stop all the world's destruction, why are there so many organized groups unable to take control? Where are the other heroes who would be so inclined to end the evil of Team Galactic and others? The plot of the main series Pokemon games at some point has you stopping an obvious threat to the world. Either organized crime or planet-destroying tragedies that aren't beneficial to the majority of people in Pokemon. Power fantasy involves you, as a child protagonist, starting your journey and getting strong enough to overcome these obstacles. Again, for conversation's sake, let's assume you're not gaining region-shaking Pokemon in a few hours. Like, you can't blow through walls just yet. But in like a few days? Weeks? How many months is it appropriate to become stronger than most governments in the real world? If hypothetically your character didn't exist, or maybe even wasn't as strong as gym leaders flex, what would happen to the Pokemon world's cartoonish threats? In one instance, in the Generation 5 games, Black and White, where Team Plasma is plotting to do their New World Order type stuff, the gym leaders of the game battle the Sages. The Sages are the heads of Team Plasma, but they aren't controlling the final act of the game. They are simply held off by the gym leaders while you stop the actual threat. Because of your immense strength by the end of the game, players could have theoretically fought off all the Sages, battled through End's castle, and defeated the final 2 bosses all by yourself, while the gym leaders, the other strongest trainers, can only hold off the mini-bosses. In the Let's Go Pokemon games, Elite Four member Lorelei is shown helping you from an ambush by Team Rocket members, but shows little interest in cutting to the root of the problem. And there are very few examples of gym leaders passively helping you against threats, and the other ones are quite surface level. To their credit, the ones of Unova try a little harder. It seems like we should just jump to the real goats of the Pokemon game, the champions.
So I see that you've made it this far.
I will sit on the throne. You'll lose, and I'll be champion.
Show me what you've got. Let's see how you fare against the leader of the Elite Four and my army of dragons!
Regions with gym leaders also have someone who is designated champion, strongest trainer in that region better than any gym leader or Elite Four member. But like them, they tend to act purely in self-interest. Champions like Wallace, Iris, and Diantha barely take any worry in the state of their region's struggles, just kinda doing their own thing. Champion of the Kanto region, Lance, only appears taking action towards Team Rocket after they've been defeated. Even Champion of the Center region, Cynthia, arguably the most hands-on one of them all, only helps against the threat of the world being restarted when it doesn't interfere with her personal goal of researching legendary Pokemon. Sorry Cynthia fans, I'm right there with you, but if she won't help you fight Satan, what is she good for? Only at times where you stare destruction right in the face are you the player ever actually relied on to stop anything. Yet you do all the heavy lifting anyway. It's never stated it's your job to stop an organization, you just end up doing it. Wouldn't the strongest trainers come to stop the world-ending threats in their own backyard? Do the most powerful people today do the same? When something needs to get done, like pushing for free healthcare or keeping social security, is it the most powerful people who acknowledge the needs of the many, or is it the people who need those policies to survive that push the powerful people into action? It appears the villainous teams would win if it wasn't for your intervention, or at least get even closer to their goals. In a world where the powerful are unchecked and could solve so many problems, or some kid could start training Pokemon for a week and become on par with recognized masters, nobody but you, and sometimes a champion or a rival, casually try to fix the problems that threaten the extremely peaceful world they inhabit. Millions of people go to war to protect the peace they have at home if they think it's threatened. They go into it with little or no training, but are willing to die for their country or God-given right to freedom. Yet so few Pokemon trainers attempt to aid you or any organized force into stopping mass threats. And they already have Pokemon to help, and if they were taken from you, you think that's something they'd want to avoid. How many people now go to rallies if they think someone's going to take their guns away? These groups can get so powerful and organized with nothing in their way but recruitment. The only checks and balances put in place is to leave the warlords or gym leaders alone, and they'll never bother you. I bet Giovanni could have convinced all the gym leaders in Kanto to support his efforts if he just included them on the payroll and let them and their lackeys keep their Pokemon. The Pokemon games could be viewed as young people of the planet trying to get the ruling class to help them stop the doom staring them all in the face, only to fail and show that personal accountability and actions can save the day. Which is an inspiring message if everything was unrealistic. In reality, no one person can stop an organized force trying to change the world or keep it the same. Groups of people come together en masse only to be met with challenges by the ruling elite every day. Pokemon says skip all that and go to direct violent action. Wait, was I criticizing these games, or? If a corporation wants to set up a casino in your town, they can pay off the right people and get what they want, barring public dissent. If the Elite Four wanted to start taxing a town, literally what could anyone do to stop them? They're the strongest. What hope do normal people have to hold on to, besides hoping the right 10-year-old moves into town? How could things work better? Despite all that's been said, the Pokemon world still functions. Mainly because it's a video game and anything can occur on the whim of the writers, but it does paint a generally pleasant view of the world that attaches to the themes of Pokemon. Those themes being kindness towards others, respecting nature, believing in yourself, and lots of discipline. Without a word about any centralized government, you could assume the Pokemon world works based on communal action. Construction happens just to build what is needed, power plants are run because the people need it, cultural needs like museums and contests are done with seemingly no monetary hurdles. Yet there is still commerce for items that are completely unnecessary to normal people, like Rocky helmets and eject buttons. Notice how there is very little food ever sold. It seems like treats like lava cookies, Castelia cones, and old gâteaux are special food sold outside what is seemingly provided to people. Only recently in Sword and Shield were curry ingredients sold to players, but this might be considered this region's special food sold at luxury instead of being considered as an essential. Spaces of this world could be seen as cooperative communities getting together with the help of Pokemon as a sort of social democratic place where people are given what they need and have avenues to get what they want. The people of the Pokemon world, these magical creatures, are not seen as weapons, but as homies sharing the planet, and it's in everyone's interest to keep them happy. Maybe the people here just got too complacent to attempt to stop the utter destruction of their world. Our history shows it doesn't usually happen, but we've never reached something this close to a utopia like they have. The people of Pokemon are aware of their history, how they were once no different from Pokemon, how they've already seen the destruction of war and don't wish to repeat it. Things seem to be great for everyone now, so when someone like Getsus offers a radically different worldview, common people are hesitant and confused why someone would want to change how the peace they've achieved could be different. From an anarchist's perspective, Getsus and Team Plasma present a defendable ideology. Ignoring his ambitions to be king of the world or whatever, the propaganda that intros Pokemon Black and White makes the player consider the role they've had in Pokemon games so far. Then you think about it for more than 2 seconds and you learn that Getsus is full of shit. People in Pokemon living as equals, Getsus, they already do. If he only knew what racism or sexism was like here, maybe he'd skew his beliefs a bit. Everything Pokemon do that can be considered unsafe, to fighting, manual labor, or potentially harmful research, are also done by humans. And they do it together. That's the whole symbiosis thing everyone is fine doing. There's nothing stopping a Machoke from choking his trainer if they think they're out of line. Pokemon don't need liberation because nothing is keeping them here. Pokemon throughout the games choose to listen to their trainers, and when not respected, they just ignore their instructions. Pokemon have been known to just leave situations they don't like, and those are just conditions of the Pokemon who are battlers. The wider use of Pokemon is through the good of the collective space or as companions. They get fed and pampered regularly, given free healthcare, safer living conditions, and there are no characters that note that living with humans or the wild has any impact on Pokemon life expectancy, like how our world has studied with wild animals. If Ghetsis lived the way he wanted the world to be, he and his team wouldn't use Pokemon to fight for their missions. They would have created machines or tools to engage in the violence they saw fit. This was basically coded in their games with Pokestar Studio, where mock battles took place with non-Pokemon competitors. But no, he saw child abuse and Pokemon cruelty as a means to an end. The picture I painted in the previous chapter of the video was a more realistic take on how the Pokemon world was based on my notions of human nature that I observed myself. I'd expect other people familiar with how others work historically to agree to some capacity. But the humans of the Pokemon world have an entirely different context. In some fashion, they've already went through the worst of it. The Pokemon War I quickly mentioned before was a devastating conflict that took place 1,000 years ago. 2 countries, yes countries, not regions, broke out in a war. Pokemon were seen as powerful tools needed to be gathered to win the war. Lives were lost on both sides between people and Pokemon, and there was generally a bad vibe overall. The vibe was so bad, in fact, some dude decided Arceus wasn't doing enough, so he revived his own Pokemon and then killed everyone else's.
So he took the machine and turned it into the ultimate weapon. The man became a bringer of destruction.
The people of this world basically had both world wars, plus a little extra on top of what happened, in one conflict, and course-corrected in a way that treats all of the world's inhabitants with decency and respect. I don't know if I should play the kids game card here, but there is no signs of sexism, racism, homophobia, and everyone has equal rights. People dress how they want, act as weird as they can, and get interested in whatever they want, and nobody is running them out of town or starting hate campaigns against them for it. The major world-ending conflicts of the games are done by people who are power-hungry or have really dumb ideas. I wish someone introduced D&D to Cyrus so we could escape this world in a healthy way. But on record, these events only happen roughly once per region, and when it does, it's over and doesn't happen again. Team Rocket remnants can't bring their leader back, not because they can't rule the streets without him, just because they want their leader back. They're lost, not purely malicious. There doesn't appear to be an increase in crime due to financial situations, but for a feeling of groupthink. I'm on this team and you're not, so we have to fight. It's basically sports, but with Rattatas. Compared to, say, the US, where there isn't just one stupid detrimental way of thinking going around, but many, trutherism, warmongering, discrimination, several forms of anti-science ideologies, at this point, I wish it was just 100 lunatics trying to make a new world. There aren't people on their Pokewatches turning each other into women haters and spreading conspiracies. All an activist would have to do is go have a battle with the brightly colored eco-terrorist. The targets are clear and their ideologies are flawed. Here, there are thousands of nuanced problems occurring all at once, with people trying to stop them being halted by billions of dollars worth of strategies and brainwashed supporters of said horrible actions. My favorite fantasy aspect of Pokemon is dreaming of a world where problems are minimized and people's lives are fulfilling, whilst holding a Mudkip. The world that could have been if evolution played favorites and gave us fire breath, and history was changed for the better. The first part of the script was easy to write, going over how messed up the Pokemon world would be if it was realistic. But that still hasn't broken the escapism of the games for me, where you get to achieve something with cool-ass monsters and make a difference in the world. Isn't that what everyone wants to do on some level? Some of us just disagree on whether to use Zangoose or Slacking to do it. And I'd rather have that argument than talking about Flat Earth, or something equally as detrimental or stupid. Power dynamics are a tricky tightrope to walk, especially if you're carrying a Blastoise on your back. Not everything is black and white, and people don't always act the way they should. The Pokemon games paint a fantastical world where the wonders of it sometimes need some protection. Everyone, for the most part, goes along to get along. Why have long, languishing political debates about minor differences when our metapods are so close to evolving? Let's go slap them around outside. I think the messages laid out in these games have a lot to battle with. Analyzing your own power over certain people, how to improve your community, and determining what you need to be happy. As video games, they are designed to bring joy. The most popular franchise in the world created a setting where people live for the reason we pay for video games. They have fun in what they want to do. You can drop anything you're doing and go catch a Magikarp. Don't like your job that much? Turn that fish into your future. In a way, there's a Magikarp outside for everyone. You just have to go and catch it. If you've made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you have your own thoughts and disagreements, come talk about it with me on my Twitch channel. I don't think any good conversation has ever been done in YouTube comment sections anyway. If you could leave a like, that would mean a lot for the channel's growth. And finally, go play Pokemon XD Gale Darkness, and have a nice night.